one of the few women that President Jacob Zuma appointed to the National Planning Commission, responsible for shaping the National Development Plan. This is Women on Wealth, and I'm Nozi Pombandra. Tonight, we profile Dr. Vuyo Mahlati, the president of the International Women's Forum for South Africa. We also discuss how to amplify the voices of women leaders, and we do that with Frayintermedia Paula Fray. And in our Power Redifined segment, we bring you Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff. Women are virtually invisible on modern media's opinion pages and make up less than a quarter of print media sources. I sat down with Paula Fray, the managing director of Frayintermedia, to discuss what a thought leader is and how to promote more women to becoming thought leaders.
Well, in an era in which we have an overabundance of information, what you really want to be is somebody whose thoughts rise above the general noise that we have. And so a thought leader is someone who is able to influence generally in the area of the expertise.
And then how do women compare to men when it comes to positioning themselves as thought leaders in their respective industries?
If you look at print, for example, the print media, it's a very, very influential media. And yet the research shows that women are quoted about 17 to 22% in print media specifically. And so what we're finding is that women are less than a quarter of the people who are being quoted. They're less than a quarter of the people who are influencing the debate generally about certain issues. And so women don't fare very, very well when we look at the media landscape generally. What we also find, though, in business is that women are very, very reluctant to step up what Sheryl Sandberg really calls to lean in. And to speak out and to have a voice in business.
Let's talk about the practical ways then that a woman can, or tools that she can latch onto to build her capacity to become a thought leader.
I think one of the first things is that you have to decide that you do want to do it. I think there's a general kind of reluctance to engage with the media, either because you don't want to rise above and be seen as a target, to face criticism, to be a public person. So I think you need to decide that this is an essential tool. It's a bottom line tool for a business. Any business needs an effective communicator at the helm. And the second thing really is to decide what you need to be communicating about. You don't want to be throwing out additional information out there when in fact there's too much information out there. So I think we do need to understand what we need to be communicating about. And then the third thing is how. How are we going to speak about these issues? When do we speak about these issues? And what platforms do you use? Now, very often we're looking at big media as the source of our communication efforts or the target for our communication efforts, when in fact our target audience are our employees, and we're failing to go out there and speak to people face to face, the most effective form of communication. We're failing to actually use very, very basic communication skills in the workplace. So understanding A, that you want to do it, B, what you want to be speaking about, how you're going to speak about it, when you're going to speak about it, and what tools you're going to use.
Speaking about tools, let's look at social media. Oftentimes when we talk about thought leadership, one immediately thinks that the more followers I have on Twitter, the stronger thought leader that I am. Is that necessarily true? And as a woman, how do we win in that game?
I think it's very, very important not to conflate the number of followers with influence, because you also need to understand who you're trying to influence, who you're trying to speak to, and what you're trying to get across. So I think very often people mistake the noise of social media with communication, when in fact we're just contributing to ongoing noise. I think women who use social media, and it can be an incredibly powerful tool actually, need to understand the limitations of each of the platforms. LinkedIn has really very, very different advantages to Facebook, to Twitter, and so we need to understand why we're on those platforms in the first place and what we're trying to achieve.
Any red flags, Paula, that you would point out to women who have taken the decision that they want to become thought leaders, what not to do?
Well, first of all, I think that you do need to be an expert in the area that you want to be talking about, and you need to be comfortable with it. What you don't want to do is to have a situation where on social media you're one persona, and then in the workplace you're another persona. There really is no distinction anymore between personal and professional. You always have to have a professional profile. And so particularly around social media, my warning would be is if you don't want to see yourself quoted, saying something. If you don't want to see a particular article writing that you've said something embarrassing, then don't say it. Don't say it on social media, don't say it privately, don't say it off the cuff.
This week we took to the streets to ask people if men or women are better communicators.
I think men are better communicators because, like, you know, men, we just have this bond, we just kick it, you know.
We women, are better communicators, because you can read us like a book, We say it as it is.
I would say it depends on the situation. I think men are more rational, women are more emotional.
To me, I think men are better communicators instead of women, because then they kind of complicate it most of the time, and then they keep on changing, even mood swings, those kind of things. We usually don't understand women at all.
As president of the International Women's Forum for South Africa, she helps prepare future generations of female leaders. This week, our woman on the money is Dr. Vuyo Mahlati. Let's go back. It's been almost 20 years now since the Beijing Declaration, and yet we're still finding that we have to talk about mainstreaming women's issues, not only in Africa, but globally as well. From your experience on the various platforms that you've represented women on, what do you think is holding us back?
Well, let me start by saying that it's wonderful that we're talking about that, and a lot has been achieved. But you're right. Quite a few things are still holding us back. And one of the issues is around the whole attitude around patriarchy. We have good policies that create the space for us to participate, but we still, in terms of the legacy of our education system, and also from a patriarchal perspective, have been excluded in terms of the spaces where women should participate.
How do we change attitude, though?
The change of attitude is happening. It's happening because we now have role models. You see, what's better now than before is that we had very strong women who had to push without having the kind of role models that were already in those positions. So with their push, we ensured that we have now the women who would be part of Forbes, women who would be, the top 100. So the fact that we have that has created space for us to begin to change attitudes. It's happening. We're seeing women, make the changes that we'd like to see. And that is basically part of the change.
But are the challenges the same? I mean, if we look at the fact that you facilitated the launch of the India, Brazil, and South Africa Women's Forum, that experience, does that show that these women from these different geographies share the same challenges? Or are we perhaps being too accommodating by thinking that we all face the same problems?
Actually, that's the beautiful part, if you were to ask me about globalization with all its complexities, is the fact that you can access the network of women. Yes, women face more or less the same issues globally. The extent differs from one context to the other. And us having the access to women with knowledge, but at the same time, we push together using the platforms like Beijing, now having, our own, being the executive director of UN Women. So we use the global and local platforms from a business perspective as well as in the feminism space to ensure that we push. But most importantly, this happens at a family level.
So as we, for example, if we reach now 20 years of democracy in South Africa and you were to reflect back on that, what do you think has been the biggest achievement of women to date?
Quite a lot. I mean, first and foremost, we had to ensure, we celebrate 20 years. And as we celebrate 20 years, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, as we speak, the chairperson is a woman, the CEO is a woman, and then we go down in terms of the farming levels. We have chiefs who are women. We are seeing more and more changes that are ensuring that at a local level, we still want to see more there. And we fought when we had the traditional courts bill, which was going to disadvantage women within rural areas particularly. So, and that involved businesswomen, women in parliament, across the board to say, we are together. Whether you are in your home as a housewife, we ensure that your rights where you are and your participation within the economy as a consumer, as an entrepreneur, is accommodated. And I believe that by us doing that and participating across the levels, we are ensuring that the next phase is going to look very different from where we are. But what's most important as well is that from the skill sets, we're making waves. I mean, recent statistics by Stats SA 2011 census was showing that 50.2% of the managers out there who are women have gone through tertiary education, as to 44% men. So we're seeing that there's serious change in terms of the programs that we are supporting across the board, but the problem is still around the wage gap. So we're pushing women, they're getting into the spaces, but we are still disadvantaged in the sense that men continue to be paid more than women. And that's where the issues of attitude and also still the patriarchy that we're grappling with continues.
Every week we bring you a woman who is flexing her power muscles on the global stage. Let's take a look at Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff. One of the world's most powerful heads of state, Rousseff is more than halfway through her term as President of Brazil, the world's 7th largest national economy with a GDP of nearly $2.4 trillion. The country is hosting the World Cup this year and the Olympic Games in 2016. Dilma has recently announced her decision for re-election, with polls consistently showing the 66-year-old president with a strong lead over her closest challenger. Rousseff, a former guerrilla who was imprisoned for more than 3 years and tortured during the 1964 to 1985 dictatorship, was elected 4 years ago to replace former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who had served 2 terms. That's it for this week's episode of A Woman on Wealth. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Remember that you can talk to us on Twitter, following me at Nozipho and using the show's hashtag #Wow410. Until next time, stay empowered.